3,000 years ago, deep in the jungles of Mesoamerica, a game of football was not played for a trophy. It was a sacred ritual, a matter of life and death. The losers were not relegated to a lower league. In many cases, they were sacrificed to the gods of the underworld. According to the ancient Mayan creation myth, the Popol Vuh, the very first ball used in this game, was actually a severed human head. Welcome to the true, blood-soaked history of the world's most popular sport. Long before stadiums, billionaire owners, and billion-dollar television rights, human beings possessed an ancient, primal addiction to chasing a ball. It is an obsession that has spanned thousands of years, survived the rise and fall of empires, and evolved into a global force more powerful than most governments. To understand how a simple game conquered humanity, we must travel to ancient China. Over 2,000 years ago, the Han Dynasty was expanding its empire, and the military needed a way to train its soldiers for brutal hand-to-hand combat. They invented a ruthless physical exercise called Cuju. Translated literally, it means kick the ball. There were no highly paid, pampered stars here. It was a violent test of agility, stamina, and combat readiness. Soldiers had to kick the ball through a tiny opening, while dodging, tackling, and physically fighting off enemies. Emperor Wu, one of China's greatest military leaders, was obsessed with the game. He used it to keep his troops razor-sharp for war against northern nomadic tribes. Today, FIFA officially recognizes Cuju as the earliest documented ancestor of football. But while the Chinese were using it for discipline, another empire was about to make the game much more violent. Thousands of miles away, the Roman Empire was building its unstoppable war machine, and the Romans had a notorious appetite for blood and violence. They played a terrifying game called Harpastum, derived from a Greek word meaning to snatch or to seize. It was a chaotic hybrid of rugby, football, and a bare-knuckle street fight. Ancient writers described it as a brutal physical grind. There were very few rules. You could tackle, choke, and throw your opponents to the dirt. Players routinely suffered broken legs, shattered ribs, and snapped necks. It was designed by military generals to turn men into ruthless killers. When the Romans conquered Britain, they brought Harpastum with them, and the British took this violence to an entirely new extreme. Welcome to the terrifying era of mob football. During the Middle Ages, there were no stadiums, no referees, and no boundaries. Entire towns would declare war against neighboring villages. The objective was simple: force an inflated pig's bladder into the rival town's square. The distance between the goals could be 3 or 4 miles of open countryside. And the rules? There were absolutely none. Houses were destroyed. Businesses were smashed. People were literally trampled to death in the stampede. Knives were pulled. Blood flowed freely in the cobblestone streets. A famous, horrifying legend claims that in some eastern towns, they didn't play with a pig's bladder at all. They played with the severed heads of defeated Viking invaders. The violence grew so catastrophic that English kings were forced to intervene. King Edward II issued a royal decree banning the game in London. Anyone caught playing faced strict imprisonment. Later, King Edward III banned it again, declaring it a dangerous distraction from mandatory archery practice. The English military relied on the longbow for national defense. The king feared that men were neglecting their weapons for idle, violent games. In total, there were over 30 different royal attempts to ban football, but every single ban failed. The people refused to stop playing. Why? Why would humans risk prison and death just to kick a ball? Because the urge to play this game is deeply hardwired into human neuroscience. Psychologists and evolutionary biologists know exactly why billions of people are addicted today. It taps into the ancient, evolutionary need for tribalism. For hundreds of thousands of years, early humans survived by hunting in packs. We are biologically desperate to belong to an us and to defeat them. Modern society is safe. We no longer hunt mammoths or fight rival tribes for territory, but our brains still crave that primal, tribal conflict. Football provides a safe, ritualized space to play out those ancient instincts. When your team scores, your brain releases a massive wave of dopamine. You experience the exact same neurochemical high as a prehistoric hunter making a kill. And when your team loses, your body releases cortisol, the stress hormone. Studies show that a fan's testosterone levels actually spike and crash in sync with the players on the pitch. Psychologists call this phenomenon basking in reflected glory. Your brain literally tricks you into believing you achieved the victory yourself. That is why fans say we won instead of they won. Football is the only truly global religion. It replaces the bloody violence of ancient wars with the structured ritual of a 90-minute match. But sometimes, the game still crosses the line into actual warfare. In 1969, El Salvador and Honduras played a critical World Cup qualifier. Political tensions over land reform and mass immigration were already at a boiling point. The three-game football series ignited the powder keg. The matches were brutal. Fans clashed in the streets. Foreigners were attacked. Nationalistic propaganda flooded the radio stations, demanding revenge. And then, the military crossed the border. Air forces bombed civilian airports. Troops engaged in bloody firefights. The conflict became known to history as the Football War. It lasted exactly 100 hours. By the time a ceasefire was negotiated, 3,000 people had been killed. Tens of thousands more lost their homes and became refugees. The sport that was meant to simulate tribal war had actually caused a real one. It was a grim reminder of the immense, dangerous power this game holds over human emotion. And today, the organization that controls this ancient force is arguably more powerful than many sovereign governments. FIFA consists of 211 member associations. That is more members than the United Nations. They control billions of dollars in revenue and command the attention of 4 billion people. Because of their immense reach, they operate almost like a sovereign empire. But in 2015, the world learned the dark truth about this empire. The United States Department of Justice and the FBI dropped a bombshell. They exposed a 24-year syndicate of systemic criminality within FIFA. It included widespread racketeering, wire fraud, and money laundering. Over $150 million in bribes and kickbacks were uncovered. Top executives had allegedly treated the world's most popular sport like a private mafia enterprise. World Cups, the pinnacle of the sport, were allegedly bought and sold to the highest bidder. And authoritarian regimes have historically used the beautiful game as a tool for sports washing. They spend billions to host tournaments, using the universal love of football to cleanse their global reputations. Because they know the ultimate truth about human psychology. When the ball rolls, the world forgets everything else. The tribal instinct takes over. The dopamine floods the brain, and the ancient obsession begins again. From the sacrificial blood on the altars of ancient Mesoamerican jungles, to the muddy, chaotic riots of medieval English towns, and the tragic, blood-stained borders of the football war. This game is not just a sport. It never was. It is a primal addiction. It is human nature itself. Subscribe to survive the hidden angle.